Hello, and welcome to episode 127 of Design Curious Podcast. Today on the episode, I'm taking a realistic view of the unexpected. We don't often like to think about what could go wrong. At least I don't. I'm more of a positive person, but it is good to set yourself up just in case things do go wrong. The unexpected might happen for you. I will share in the episode several scenarios of recent things that have happened and situations in the past that I was not prepared for. And I hope and pray that you will be prepared for these situations once you hear them and take the steps that I outline in the episode. Before we get there, I want to remind you that I have a mentorship program just for you if you are considering the career of interior design, or if you're just starting out and you want to develop your skills, you have questions, you want guidance on how to start your business, how to grow your business, or how to even get into interior design, then My Design Mentor is for you. You can check the links in the show notes. And now let's get to our episode talking about planning for the unexpected in the interior design industry. You're now listening to Design Curious, a place where you, creative one, are here to learn about what it really is like to be an interior designer. And I'm your host and mentor, Rebecca Ward. If you're worried about how to succeed in a creative career, if you're ready to learn your next steps to become an interior designer, and if you want the satisfaction of doing something you love every day, you are in the right place. Grab a coffee, a notebook, and let's dig into today's episode. So I don't want this episode to be a downer. I just want everyone to be realistic when they are planning their projects and dealing with clients. Nothing is certain in a project, but proper planning can help mitigate stress and financial loss. One of the reasons why I thought it was important to talk about this today is a series of recent events from talking to a colleague of mine and a contractor of mine and just reflecting on past situations. And I'm going to touch on all of those as we go along. But first, let's talk about the uncertainty in design projects. Every project has a lot of moving parts. There are clients, contractors, designer, materials, budgets, timelines. All of these are opportunities for things to go right, but also for things to go wrong. So first of all, as the designer, you need to make sure that you are taking care of yourself, health-wise, mental health-wise, and all the things so that you can properly do your job so you don't have to get overworked and overwhelmed and take time off of work. That's a whole nother podcast on taking care of yourself as a designer. Maybe I'll touch on that again someday. But yeah, first of all, the designer, make sure that you are well taken care of. And when you're going into an agreement with your clients on a project, you most of the time have no idea how they are doing physically, mentally, and financially, unless they tell you. I'm not the one to sit down and say, okay, tell me, how are your finances right now? And have you seen your doctor lately before I enter into a contract with the client? That just is not the done thing. And then with your contractors, I mean, you've probably been working with them a little bit, unless you're just starting out and you're vetting them, but they're not going to tell you if they are having health problems before they start the job. Now, I do have a contractor who I have been working with for a while, and we were working on a project together. He needed to have a surgery. He let me know ahead of time. It was a minor invasive surgery, and that he would, have his guys on the project. He would still be able to supervise. It was moderate recovery time. He'd still be able to do some job site visits within a week or two after having the surgery. And so he let me know. I think he also let the client know, just so everyone was on the up and up. And that was a good way to handle it. Of course, there's always risks going into surgery. So we had to also be prepared, like in case something serious happened to him. Fortunately, that wasn't the case. I also have had a contractor recently who was doing just a small job for me. He had a little health scare, goes into the ER, and he has not been out of the ER or out of the hospital in the last month because it looks like he might have a very serious illness. Unfortunately, he's not going to be able to continue working on the project that I had him on. So I have to find other people to take care of that. And of course, I am very concerned about my contractor. I want him to recover and do well. The outlook is not good. And so we're definitely keeping him in our prayers. But things like that can definitely cause delays. It can cause frustration, even though everyone is completely understanding. It had taken some time to get to this point where we had bids and he was ready to start the work. And now we have to start all over with someone else. And that can be frustrating. And at the same time, you don't feel like you're allowed to feel frustrated because you feel so bad about this contractor for circumstances outside of his control. Another thing that could happen is that if I had a contractor that I worked with briefly, he was recommended to me by a realtor. I didn't do my due diligence to look into his background. I just knew that he was available to do a paint job, and turns out that he had a warrant out for his arrest and he had been arrested over a weekend. We were not able to get a hold of him at all because he didn't have a cell phone. We were like, what is going on? That, needless to say, we didn't work with him again. But you never know. So it's really important to do your diligence when you're checking out your contractors, check their licenses and vet them out to make sure that they are upstanding individuals. They themselves might have issues with their subs as well. So sometimes a sub might not show up on a job. A sub might have a family emergency or someone's having a baby and they need to take some time off. So a lot of moving parts, like I say, things can come up. And then there's the whole financial crisis. Someone might lose their job. A supplier might increase the price or things become unattainable now. Unexpected repairs. You open up a wall and all of a sudden there's termites everywhere and you have to get the whole house tented and there's unexpected expenses that go along with those things that might eat into your furnishings budgets. And let's not forget the wonderful time of the pandemic where there was huge product delays. Port delays, things that were just sitting out at sea. We couldn't get to a lot of our product that was imported. I don't need to go on and tell you all of the different things that can happen that brings uncertainty to a project. They can delay payments. They can cancel the project. They can increase the emotional load for managing the client's stress, managing your own stress. The timelines might shift. It might go from 6 months to 18 months. To conclude the project. And so the point of today's episode is that I want you to be prepared and be having thought through all of these situations before you even enter into contract with your client. Every designer needs a rock solid contract. I recently had a contract attorney take a look at mine, and there was a few things that need to be freshened up and added to it. Definitely, if you haven't had an attorney look at your contract, be sure and do that because things can change over time and it's important to make sure that you are up to date on all those things. You also want to make sure that your contract clearly defines the project scope, your payment structure, how you want to get paid, when you get paid, and expectations that you have of the client and what the client can have from you. You want the contract to protect you from financial loss if the project is put on pause or gets canceled. And you want to make sure it includes terms for delays, changes, and unexpected situations. So in my contract, I put in there that in case life happens, and I talk about this with my client at our initial consultation, we never know when life is going to happen to us. They might need to cancel or pause a project, which is totally fine. I tell them, just let me know the moment that you have to put it on pause. Communicate with me. I will stop work and I'll issue a final invoice. And here's where the role of a retainer comes into play, because now that they've had to pause or cancel their project, it's likely they are under extreme stress because of whatever situation caused them to pause or cancel it. I have a policy of taking a retainer at the beginning of the project. The retainer is for 20% of my estimated design fees for the entire project. So I take that retainer up front and I just hold on to it. I don't apply it to the first month's invoices. I hold on to it in case things like this happen, because then once they communicate that they cannot proceed with the project any longer, not a problem. I issue the invoice for hours worked up to that moment, and then I can take the retainer and apply it to that invoice. They don't even have to worry about coming up with more funds. Like, say someone had to go to the ER for a week. That's really expensive, and they don't have a lot of additional funds to throw at a couple $1,000 invoice coming from their interior designer. That's the least of their worries. And so having that retainer there gives me security. It gives the client security that we can resolve this financial issue without much stress to either party. Now, I have it set up in my contract that it is good for 6 months after the last time we've had any activity on the project, just in case we do have a pause, and maybe it can be resumed within 6 months of that pause. Then we can just keep continuing on that same contract. If the time exceeds that 6-month marker, though, then we will likely cancel that contract. And then once they are ready to resume, we will sign a new contract, because, every so often, every couple of years or a year or two, I do raise my rates. And so I don't want to necessarily have an old contract out that's still valid 10 years down the road for this client. So that I do make sure there is a limitation of term on that contract after inactivity. So I want you to prepare yourself as a designer, set up expectations from the beginning for yourself and for the client in case things like this happen. So educate them on the importance of flexibility in the project for these timeline disruptions, things that could go wrong. Something will go wrong on the project. Nothing can go perfectly right every single time. As we know, no one is perfect, and neither is a project. And so the expectation of something going wrong will just ease that for the client, that ease that stress once that situation does arise, and also for yourself. The key is to communicate early and often about potential risks. So if you know that you are approaching a budget overage with your time, perhaps because you did open up that wall and there's termites, and now you have to organize for all these other trades to come in and take care of it, and then you have to open up more walls, and your project management time is increasing. Well, just be honest about that. Like, just say, we know this is an issue. We're here to take care of it for you. Of course, this does add to our anticipated estimated fees, but we will get the job done for you. Make sure that you are creating a financial buffer in your business. You don't want to rely solely on one project's cash flow. You want to diversify your income. So making sure you're paying for consultations. Maybe you have one-time consultations that can help offset your monthly time billing goals. Have some passive income. Maybe you create a course or have an ebook or something like that people can purchase without taking time away from you. Also, be sure to have emergency fund and savings for those slow months. There is a lot of ebb and flow in the design process and in the industry. Certain times of years are slower than others, and certain years are slower than others. So you want to have savings built up so that provides a cushion, and then you're not so desperate for that project to continue when it can't. Having your mindset in the right place is another way to help prepare yourself, that you want to view challenges as part of the jobs and not failures. One of my favorite parts of the job actually is troubleshooting and problem solving on site as we're going through construction. Those challenges are just a part of the job, and that's a part that I choose to love. You want to build a strong relationship with your vendors and contractors to help troubleshoot those things together when issues come up, because they will. All right, so what are some proactive strategies for managing unexpected situations? Well, have a pause plan. So what will you do if a project halts unexpectedly? Let's have a process around this. So first, you're going to keep communication open with that client. You want to offer a plan to resume work when they're ready. So like I said, I told my clients, like, within 6 months, we can just keep going on the same contract, or we'll just sign a new contract. Easy peasy. We can maintain legal protections so that you're not left unpaid. So here comes the retainer, also the enforcement of the contract if needed. I had a client who unfortunately passed away at the very end of the project. We were just about to deliver one of the final pieces of furniture, and his family all lived out of state. His daughter came to settle his affairs, and I had to work with her on this remaining furniture. Now, policy was, because it was a custom piece and we had been waiting for this desk, it was custom finish and size and everything for his home. She's like, I'm going to sell the home. I don't need this piece. Can I return it? And I had to bring out my contract, and I told her that custom items cannot be returned, that he's already paid for it. She owns it. But in this situation, I felt like it was appropriate to try to help her find a solution, because she was from out of state. She did not know anyone she could sell this furniture to. She was trying to downsize and liquidate his funds as quickly as possible. So I told her I would work on trying to find a third party to purchase this desk from her on her behalf, to help her with this troubling situation. And I was able to. Then she was off the hook for receiving it and trying to sell it herself. So you never know. But you do have the legal protection of your contract. If I really needed to enforce that, I could. In this situation, I chose to take a softer approach and help her find a solution before I forced her to take that desk from me, which I didn't feel was warranted. So that's where you can have some flexibility versus firm boundaries. Depends on the client sometimes. Knowing when to be compassionate versus when to enforce the contract terms. You can be understanding, but your business still must be profitable. I have been guilty of making the mistake of being too understanding at the cost of making my business less profitable. And over the years, I have learned to set appropriate boundaries with my clients and also prepared for future situations. So some of the situations I came across where I had a client who agreed to the design, approved all of the furnishings, and when it got installed, she did not like anything, is what she told me. That she didn't know how it happened, but she did not want to keep any of this living room. She was retired. She was on a fixed income. She broke down crying, and I was unprepared for this reaction. So I responded in the same moment when I should have taken a beat to consider my business, what was best for my business, not only for the client. And I agreed to take back all of that furniture, which was a big no-no. You shouldn't do that. I was not obligated at all to take it back from her. I just was caught up in the emotions of the moment and with sympathy for her situation. But that really set my business back for that quarter. And I had to then find new homes or sell off the furniture for way less. And some of it didn't even cover the cost of purchasing it. So it was a big mess, a nightmare, and I should have stuck to the terms of my contract in that situation. Whereas before, with the gentleman who had passed away and his daughter, I felt it was totally fine to be flexible on that boundary. So you can have understanding, but your business must still be profitable. Leveraging your team and network is another way to be proactive to manage these situations. So build a strong network of legal and financial advisors. So like I said, seek out a contract attorney, seek out a CPA, a fractional CFO if you need that, and other financial advisors who can help you in these situations when you're facing something that feels like it's outside of your comfort zone or your typical workings as a business owner. Join design groups, like many I have mentioned before, like ASID or other peer groups that you might have in your area. And also, like I started a group for just this reason so that I can talk about business practices with my local design network. And we get together once a month to kind of do some learning, but we also kind of compare things like what's on your contract and how do I deal with this difficult client and what can I do to get my plans through permit on this building department and things like that. So it's really important to have a group like that. You know, if I had taken the time in that one situation where I took back the furniture in that emotional situation, if I had taken a pause and told her, give me a week to think about this, I'll come back to you, I could have sought out the direction of my peers, of my financial advisor, and they would have told me that as sorry as you feel for this person, you cannot lose money on this project just because you feel bad for her. She has agreed to the contract, and so you are able to enforce that. All right, so all this to say that uncertainty is inevitable. Planning with a solid contract, retainer, financial strategies can make all the difference. So I encourage you, review your contracts and your policies today. Ensure that you are protected. You never know what's going to happen. I invite you to share your own unexpected project experiences. I love to listen and learn from situations. I know I've shared a few with you today of mine. I'd love to hear yours. So you can message me or email me. My wish is that you can go through your career without having these issues arise, but of course we know that is not realistic. And so I hope you listen today not to feel down or fearful about the future, but just to mitigate any stress and concern. It's great to be prepared and have your ducks in a row. So I hope that leaves you a little more prepared on at least thinking about some things that could happen. We certainly don't want it to happen to you, but it could. And I want you to be prepared. I don't want you to be stuck in debt or completely stressed out or having to close your business because something like this went wrong. Okay, so don't forget to check out my mentorship program, My Design Mentor, for more in-depth business coaching for you aspiring designers. Also, I've got some fun links for you, downloads in the show notes, and a quiz for you. And also, I would love to have you leave me a rating and a review on Apple Podcasts if you haven't already. I know it's a part of the tail end of the show, but I never ask for them, but I love reading them. And so if you could just take the time to leave me a review, I would love to hear and make sure that I am addressing all the things you want to hear and that you're learning from Design Curious and that it's something that I should keep doing. All right, that's it for me today. I'll have another great episode and interview for you next week. And until then, stay creative. Thanks for listening. If you love this episode, please leave a rating and a review. This helps me reach other curious creatives like you. If you have a topic request or would like to contact me, simply head over to my website, rwarddesign.com, or email me at podcast@rwarddesign.com.